I love the ability to defer work for later by sending messages to a transport. But there is at least one practical bummer. It makes it a bit harder to actually develop and code your app. In addition to setting up your web server, database, and anything else, you now need to remember to run bin console messenger consume. Otherwise, things won't fully work. If you have a robust setup for local development, maybe something using Docker, you could build this right into that setup so that it runs automatically. Except you'd still need to remember to restart the worker anytime you make a change to some code that it uses. It's not the worst thing ever, but if this drives you crazy, there is a really nice solution. Tell Messenger to handle all of your messages synchronously when you're in the dev environment. Check out config packages messenger.yaml. One of the commented out parts of this file is a kind of suggested transport called sync. The really important part isn't the name sync, but the DSN, sync://. We learned earlier that Messenger supports several different types of transports, like Doctrine, Redis, and AMQP. And the way you choose which one you want is the beginning of the connection string, like Doctrine://. The sync transport is really neat. Instead of truly sending each message to an external queue, it just handles them immediately. They're handled synchronously. We can take advantage of this and use a configuration trick to change our async and async priority high transports to use the sync transport only when we're in the dev environment. Go into the config packages dev directory. Any files here are only loaded in the dev environment and override all values from the main config packages directory. Create a new file called messenger.yaml, though the name of this file isn't important. Inside, we'll put the same configuration we have in our main file, framework messenger transports. Then override async and set it to sync://. Do the same for async priority high. Set it to sync://. That's it. In the dev environment, these values will override the DSN values from the main file. And we can see this. In an open terminal tab, run bin console debug::config framework messenger. This command shows you the real final config under framework and messenger. And yeah, because we're currently in the dev environment, both transports have a DSN set to sync://. I do want to mention that the queue name option is something that's specific to Doctrine. The sync transport doesn't use that, and so it ignores it. It's possible that, in a future version of Symfony, this would throw an error because we're using an undefined option for this transport. If that happens, we would just need to change the YAML format to set the DSN key, like we do in the main messenger.yaml file, and then override the options key and set it to an empty array. I'm mentioning this just in case. Okay, let's try this. Refresh the page to be safe. Oh, and before we upload something, go back to the terminal where our worker is running, hit Ctrl+C to stop it, and restart it. Whoa, it's busted! You cannot receive messages from the sync transport. Messenger is saying, yo, the sync transport isn't a real queue you can read from, so stop trying to do it. It's right, and this is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to be able to have our handlers called in the dev environment without needing to worry about running this command. Okay, now let's try it. Upload a couple of photos, and yeah, it's super slow again. But Polka is added when it finishes. The messages are being handled synchronously. To make sure this is only happening for the dev environment, open up the .env file and change app_env to be prod temporarily. Make sure to clear your cache so this works. bin console cache:_clear. Now, we should be able to run messenger consume like before. Bin console messenger consume -vv async priority high async. And we can sync messages in dev, async in prod. Now that we've accomplished this, change append back to dev, and just to keep things more interesting for the tutorial, comment out the new sync config we just added. I want to continue using our real transports while we're coding. Stop and restart the worker. Next, let's talk about a similar problem. How do you handle transports when writing automated tests?